Silence creates an emotional contrast that she can't escape, and this contrast grows deeper with every day you stay quiet. In the beginning, she may feel confident about her decision. She might believe she made the right call by pulling away, acting distant, or walking out of your life. At first, she may even feel free, relieved, or curious about what else is out there. That initial high is normal. People often chase novelty when they're unsure of themselves or when they think the grass is greener somewhere else. But that early excitement never lasts. What begins as a confident move gradually turns into a haunting realization, because silence is the amplifier of emotional truth. When your voice disappears, when your energy is no longer accessible, when the comfort of your presence suddenly vanishes, she cannot hide from the internal dialogue that starts forming in her mind. Silence creates space, and in that space, her emotions are no longer drowned out by distractions. Your silence becomes the reminder of everything she once had but didn't appreciate. Without your consistent messages, your good morning texts, your emotional support, or your stability, life doesn't feel the same. She may try to pretend it doesn't matter. She might distract herself with friends, social media, or temporary connections. She might try to convince herself she's better off, but deep down she starts to compare. This comparison is not something she intends to do. It happens naturally. Human beings are wired to reassess past experiences when facing uncertainty. Every good moment you shared becomes a reference point for her. Every thoughtful action, every moment of understanding, every time you made her feel seen or valued becomes louder in her memory. And memories are powerful because they don't fade when silence amplifies them, they intensify. Silence forces her to reflect on something she took for granted, your consistency. When you were present, she may not have understood the emotional weight you carried in her life, but when you withdraw, she begins to feel the absence of that emotional anchor. You were not just another person in her life. You were a source of validation, stability, and emotional peace. When that disappears, she begins to feel a growing discomfort that she cannot explain away. That is the emotional contrast, the difference between life with you and life without you. And the longer you remain silent, the sharper that contrast becomes. Every day that passes without your voice subtly shifts her perception. Time moves differently when someone begins to miss the presence they once overlooked. At first, the silence feels normal. Then it becomes noticeable. Then it starts to feel unsettling. Eventually, it becomes a question mark in her mind. Why hasn't he reached out? Did he stop caring? Has he moved on? That curiosity quickly turns into insecurity. The very same woman who once felt confident enough to pull away now starts feeling uncertain about her decision. That uncertainty becomes emotional turbulence, and nothing intensifies turbulence more than silence, because silence gives her no reassurance, no closure, no explanation, and no emotional safety net. Without any response from you, she is forced to confront herself. She begins analyzing moments she used to ignore. She replays conversations, arguments, decisions, and subtle changes in your behavior. She starts wondering if she caused the distance, if she misjudged your value, or if she pushed away someone who genuinely cared for her. This process doesn't happen instantly. It unfolds slowly, naturally, and powerfully through silence. You're not convincing her of anything. You're not begging, explaining, or reacting. Your silence becomes the teacher, and she becomes the student of her own emotions. The more time passes, the more she feels the emotional contrast. Your absence becomes heavier. Your silence becomes meaningful. The peace you give yourself begins to reflect back to her as emotional chaos, And the beauty of silence is that it's not manipulative, it's self-respect. You're not playing games. You're simply choosing not to participate in situations where you're not valued. That alone changes everything because emotional contrast is born from realization, not pressure. When she sees that you're not chasing, not reacting, and not trying to fix things, she recognizes deep down that you were the stable one. You were the grounded one. You were the one who cared, and she begins to miss that energy more than she expected. As days turn into weeks, silence becomes the emotional weight she carries quietly. She might not show it. She might not admit it. She may pretend she's fine, but internally she begins to feel what she never expected: regret, doubt, concern. She starts to see the difference between temporary excitement and long-term value. She begins to understand how rare your presence truly was. That's the power of silence. It doesn't push her away, it reveals the truth, and the truth hits harder over time. Silence doesn't weaken your position, it strengthens it. It shows her what life feels like without you. It shows her the contrast she never noticed, and eventually that contrast becomes impossible for her to ignore. Time has a way of stripping away illusions, and when you choose silence, time becomes your strongest ally. At first, she might not feel anything significant. She may even feel justified in her choices, convinced that distancing herself, pulling back, or stepping away was the right move. But time has a unique way of revealing truth that emotions often hide in the moment. When the emotional high fades, when distractions lose their shine, and when new experiences fail to provide the fulfillment she expected, accountability starts to creep in. Slowly, quietly, and powerfully, she begins to evaluate her role in everything that happened. This self-reflection doesn't come because you asked for it. It comes because you didn't. Your silence removes the noise, the arguments, the explanations, and the defensive reactions. Without those, her mind has no choice but to deal with the reality of her own actions. Time is not neutral. It exposes what was real and what was temporary. In the early stages of separation or distance, people tend to rationalize their decisions. They tell themselves stories to justify why they acted the way they did. She might blame you, she might point out your flaws, she might convince herself that leaving or pulling away was necessary. That's her ego talking, trying to protect her from painful truths. But the longer time goes on, the quieter the ego becomes, and the more the truth surfaces. That truth is often uncomfortable because it forces her to acknowledge the parts she played in the dynamic. Maybe she pushed you away when you were giving your best. Maybe she stopped appreciating your effort. Maybe she acted impulsively, thinking you would always be there no matter what. Maybe she tested your patience one too many times. These reflections don't hit all at once. They appear in waves, each one stronger than the last. Time also magnifies the consequences of her decisions. In the moment, she may have thought she had options, that she could replace you, that she could find something better. But as time passes, she begins to realize the truth. Connection is not easily replaced, emotional safety is rare, and genuine loyalty is priceless. New people might seem exciting at first, but excitement doesn't equal compatibility. She starts to notice the effort you used to make, the consistency you showed, the understanding you provided. These qualities stand out more sharply when she encounters others who don't have them, and the longer you stay silent, the more obvious this contrast becomes. Time forces her to compare her current experiences with what she once had, and comparison almost always exposes the loss. Your silence also takes away her ability to shift responsibility onto you. When you're not arguing, defending yourself, or trying to prove your worth, she can't point to your reactions as excuses for her behavior. Your absence removes any distractions from her self-evaluation. She begins to question, was I too harsh? Did I push too far? Did I misunderstand him? Did I take advantage of his kindness? Did I sabotage something meaningful? These questions begin as small whispers and evolve into heavy thoughts that linger. They come at quiet moments late at night, early in the morning, or during situations that subconsciously remind her of you. Over time, these thoughts become harder to ignore. Time also breaks down narratives she built to comfort herself. If she told herself you were the problem, silence forces her to confront whether that was truly the case. If you were expressing love, stability, and loyalty while she was inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or careless, time exposes that imbalance. She begins to see that the person she pushed away may have been the person she actually needed. Regret forms when the value of something becomes clear only after it's gone. Time ensures she feels that realization deeply, and as time passes, the consequences of her choices grow heavier. Maybe other people disappoint her. Maybe she experiences emotional inconsistency from someone new. Maybe the novelty fades and she begins missing the comfort of what you provided. Maybe she sees you growing, improving, focusing on yourself, and not looking back. Nothing intensifies accountability like watching someone you took for granted become stronger without you. It forces her to rethink everything she assumed. You staying silent sends a message. You're no longer available for disrespect, confusion, or emotional inconsistency. Time makes that message louder. She begins to understand that your silence is not anger, it's growth, it's self-respect, it's realizing your worth. And when a woman realizes she lost someone who valued her, who genuinely cared, who tried, who showed up, and who remained loyal, that realization hits harder with time. She starts feeling the weight of what she lost, not because you reminded her, but because life did. Time allows guilt, regret, and reflection to take root, and these emotions grow stronger when there is no communication. She can't escape them because silence doesn't give her an external narrative to hold on to. Your absence becomes a mirror reflecting back her decisions, her mistakes, and her lack of effort. Eventually, this leads her to question whether letting you go was her biggest mistake. Not because you pressured her to think that way, but because time revealed the truth she was too blinded to see earlier. Your detachment is not about ignoring her or punishing her. It's about rebuilding the power you lost while trying to hold on to someone who wasn't meeting you halfway. When you stop reaching out, stop seeking reassurance, and stop chasing a connection that wasn't reciprocated, something fundamental shifts inside you. You stop operating from fear, and you start operating from strength. Detachment is the turning point where you reclaim your identity, your emotional balance, and your personal authority. It's where you remember who you were before the confusion, before the anxiety, and before you allowed someone else's inconsistency to dictate your emotional state. When you choose silence, you're not just stepping back from her. You're stepping back into yourself. At first, the urge to reach out might still be there. You might feel a pull to check her social media to see if she thought about you, or to send that one message you think will fix everything. But every time you resist that urge, you strengthen yourself. You're telling your mind and your heart, I matter, my peace matters, my self-respect matters. That internal message begins to reshape your emotional landscape. You stop feeling powerless. You stop feeling like you need her validation to feel whole. And the more days that pass, the stronger that internal transformation becomes. You start noticing changes, your anxiety reduces, your self-esteem rises, your clarity returns, and you begin seeing the situation from a place of understanding instead of desperation. Your detachment also changes the energy dynamic between you and her. When you were chasing, explaining, convincing, or trying to fix things, you unknowingly placed her in a position of emotional power. She was the chooser, you were the seeker. She was the one who pulled away, you were the one trying to hold on. But when you detach, you shift the entire balance. You stop feeding the dynamic that made her feel comfortable taking you for granted. You stop reinforcing the idea that you'll always be available no matter how she behaves. Silence restores equality because it shows that you're no longer willing to give more than you receive. And in many cases, it gives you even more leverage because it demonstrates strength she did not expect. This shift is not one she can ignore. When a man who was once emotionally available suddenly becomes silent, women notice. It may not happen instantly, but they always notice. Your silence sends a message without sending a single word. It tells her you're not dependent on her attention. It tells her you're prioritizing yourself. It tells her you're rediscovering your value. And the more she sees this, the more she begins to question her own assumptions about you. She expected you to chase. She expected you to wait. She expected you to show up whenever she changed her mind. But when you detach, you break that expectation. And nothing triggers curiosity and respect more than unpredictability rooted in self-worth. As you detach, you naturally begin to regain focus in your own life. You start investing your emotional energy into things that elevate you. Your career, your goals, your fitness, your mental peace, your purpose. You start reconnecting with hobbies and passions you abandoned while you were preoccupied with her behavior. You start feeling lighter, stronger, more confident. This growth is not just an internal shift, it becomes visible. People around you notice the change. You walk differently. You talk differently. Your energy carries a calm authority that only comes from a man who knows his worth and is no longer chasing conditional affection. This transformation also affects how she sees you. Your growth contrasts sharply with the version of you she walked away from. She starts wondering how you're doing, why you seem unbothered, why you didn't break down like she expected. Time reveals your evolution, and silence amplifies it. Women are highly perceptive to emotional and behavioral changes, especially in men they once had an emotional bond with. When she sees you leveling up without her, it challenges her ego and her assumptions. She may not admit it, but inside she starts questioning whether she underestimated you or failed to recognize your value. That's the power of detachment. It forces her to reevaluate the story she told herself about you. Your detachment also redefines the relationship you have with yourself. You start recognizing patterns you tolerated, behaviors you accepted, and boundaries you never enforced. You begin to understand that your worth isn't determined by whether someone chooses you or not. You rebuild your standards. You rebuild your confidence. You rebuild your emotional independence. You begin to operate like a man who can walk away from any situation that does not align with his value. This kind of inner strength becomes unshakable because it's built through discipline and self-respect, not external validation. The more you grow, the more her perception shifts. Silence becomes the backdrop for your transformation. You're not posting to provoke her. You're not trying to show off. You're simply becoming better, and growth speaks louder than any message you could have sent. She starts noticing the difference between the man she left behind and the man you are becoming, and that contrast slowly starts working on her mind. She might try to distract herself, but she can't escape the reality that you're no longer the version she thought she could come back to anytime she wanted. Your detachment is not just a strategy, it's a rebirth. It's the process of returning to your core strength. It's the moment you reclaim emotional power, not by force but by discipline. When you detach, you stop reacting and start leading. You stop waiting and start building. You stop doubting and start believing in yourself again. And that transformation will always pull her attention, not because you tried to win her back, but because you became a man who doesn't need her to feel complete. The emotional pendulum always swings back, especially when you remain silent, centered, and unmoved. People often make emotional decisions in the moment, decisions driven by frustration, impulsiveness, ego, or the desire for something new. In the beginning, she might feel confident about pulling away. She may convince herself she's doing the right thing. But emotional decisions made in a moment rarely reflect long-term truth. As time passes, her feelings begin to shift, evolve, and mature. What once felt liberating can slowly turn into confusion. What once felt exciting can slowly turn into emptiness. And what once felt like certainty can eventually become regret. This shift doesn't happen suddenly, it happens quietly, gradually, and always more intensely when the man stays silent. When you stay detached, her mind begins to wander. She starts replaying the last moments between you. She replays your last conversation, your last message, your last reaction, or lack of reaction. She starts wondering why you're not chasing, why you're not asking questions, why you're not fighting for her. That confusion is the beginning of the emotional pendulum swinging back. Human nature is predictable. We value what we lose more than what we have, and we desire what we feel slipping out of our control. When she no longer feels your energy, your attention, or your presence, she begins to feel something she didn't expect: uncertainty. At first, this uncertainty appears as curiosity. She might check your social media. She might ask mutual friends how you're doing. She might wonder whether you've moved on or if you still care. And as time goes on, that curiosity becomes stronger. She notices that you aren't posting sad quotes. You aren't begging for closure. You aren't attempting to fix anything. Instead, she sees you living your life, improving yourself, focusing on your purpose. This calmness challenges her assumptions. She expected you to react emotionally. She expected you to chase. When you don't, the emotional pendulum moves further back toward you. Then curiosity slowly shifts to nostalgia. Her mind begins remembering your best qualities, the moments you made her feel safe, the times you made her laugh, the conversations that made her feel understood. Nostalgia always hits hardest in silence because there's no new interaction to replace old memories. She starts comparing you, your consistency, your effort, your presence, to the people around her, and those comparisons never favor the person she left behind lightly. Nostalgia is powerful because it softens her emotional defenses. She begins to feel warmth when she thinks of you, even if she was angry, distant, or dismissive before. Silence allows her emotions to settle, and once the emotional fog clears, the truth becomes easier for her to see. You weren't the problem, you were the anchor. As more time passes, nostalgia becomes introspection. She begins to question her decisions. She wonders whether she acted too fast or was too harsh. She revisits the things she said and the moments she might have misinterpreted. She thinks about the things you did right, the effort you put in, the honesty you showed, the loyalty you gave. And when a woman begins to introspect, the pendulum swings even deeper. Regret starts to form. This regret doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be subtle. But subtle regret is often more powerful because it lingers. It makes her feel uneasy, restless, unsettled. She starts questioning herself more than she questions you. And then comes the emotional phase she didn't expect loss. Not loss because you left, but loss because she can't feel your presence anymore. Loss because you're no longer accessible. Loss because you're no longer waiting. This stage hits hardest because it forces her to confront the possibility that you might be moving forward, that you might be healing, that you might even be happier without her. Nothing triggers the emotional pendulum like the fear of losing someone who once gave you everything. It's in this stage that she begins to feel the weight of her choices. Your silence has created a vacuum that she cannot fill easily. That vacuum becomes the place where her emotions swirl, shift, and intensify. She begins imagining scenarios. What if you meet someone new? What if you forget her? What if she pushed away the one man who genuinely cared? These thoughts gain strength over time, and they pull her emotionally back toward you, not because you forced anything, but because you allowed time to reveal what she was too blinded to see. Eventually, the pendulum moves from internal emotions to external action. She may reach out subtly, a reaction to a story, a like, a short message, an excuse to check in. She might test the waters just to see how you respond, or she might try to indirectly reconnect through someone else. These attempts are signs that the pendulum has fully swung back, but the important part is this: she didn't come back because you chased her. She came back because you stayed strong, silent, and centered. She came back because time exposed the truth. She came back because your emotional discipline created the space for her to feel everything she once suppressed. Silence is not weakness. It is strategy, strength, and self-respect. The emotional pendulum always swings back toward the one who stayed calm, toward the one who didn't beg, toward the one who maintained self-worth. And when it swings back, it's always stronger, deeper, and more sincere than before.